Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today, we're listening to American Nightmare.
I think it must be down there.
Investigators also discovered that a call made to Bartholomew's voicemail that day she vanished came from Massapequa, which is where we are right now and where this mysterious pen pal lives.
A short drive from Delaware Beach.
Yeah.
Aren't you a little bit nervous about how he's going to react once we tell him that we know?
Yes, I'm concerned.
And how do you plan on doing that?
I'm just gonna be like, hey, so you know how we came to you? We got your name from another serial killer who said that you killed these girls.
I'm a little nervous.
Right? Following a trail of unsolved killings that stretched from Long Island across the country, Rachel and I have come to learn it's more than just the killers who make these crimes so difficult to solve. It's a broken system that allows their murders to go unchecked and the victims to go unnoticed.
There are far more serial killers than we ever imagined in our nightmares.
It's a real life horror story that's led us to 11 sex workers unearthed in Albuquerque, and the possibility of 8 more victims whose bodies are still out there somewhere on the mesa. So far, we've considered a number of different theories, from sexual sadists like Lorenzo Montoya to the urban legend of a road cop.
When the girls get found dead, we told them we did. Scare the girls to stay off the street.
We've also tried to track down the cryptic caller who claimed to know what happened to one of the missing women.
Don't open up a can of worms.
But it was only when we saw what really connected these women did a larger conspiracy emerge, one that reporter Diana Valdez believes is linked to Mexican cartels.
I believe that drug activity is at the heart of why these girls were targeted.
Valdez believes these women were killed after the cartels used them to gain a foothold in the Albuquerque drug trade.
In southern New Mexico, the Mexican drug cartels tend to use women to carry the drugs, collect money, and to send terrifying messages to the community. We're here, we're doing business, and nobody better mess with us.
Over the past 10 years, from 90 to 140 women in Juarez have been the victims of sexual homicides, their bodies dumped in ditches or vacant lots.
There's little prospect the crimes will be solved. What's worse, the killings are likely to go on.
Some of the victims have ties to the Juarez drug cartel. Low-level operatives, including police officers, helped dispose of the bodies.
This is in Juarez?
Mm-hmm. This is the type of femicide that you're seeing on the streets.
According to Valdez, the cartels weren't parading the dead women here like they do in Mexico for fear of provoking U.S. police. Instead, they've been quietly burying them on the mesa. A lot of these girls that we've looked at, they have ties to drugs. They have ties to drug trafficking.
I mean, when you look at a map, how far is Juarez from where we are right now?
4 hours.
4 hours? That's nothing. The cartel's feeding straight into New Mexico. They go straight up. This is one of the first places they're going to hit.
The crazy thing is, it's not just happening in Juarez. It's happening right here in the United States. While Valdez's cartel theory seems plausible, narco-terrorism is part of a much larger war, one too big for us to tackle here. But there was still something we could do. Do you believe there's a second burial site?
There's probably more than a second burial site. There are probably several. By the mountains, by the river. It's just so vast. It's very easy to hide a body.
With 8 missing women whose bodies have yet to be found, maybe we can help locate their burial ground and possibly solve at least one of the mysteries of the Mesa. For help, we've turned to Christine Barber, director of Street Safe, an organization that's been searching for these missing women.
To the West Mesa site where they found the West Mesa victims, there was nothing near it at all. And then in 2005, they started construction. This is the site in 2006. Wow. You couldn't have kept burying in that same site because they were doing active construction. He had to have chosen a different site.
Christine and her colleague Shannon Bungard have spent hundreds of hours scouring topographical maps for clues that might point to a second site. Focusing on soil moisture patterns, Shannon found an unusual concentration at one particular dry creek bed, or arroyo.
That makes me think that there may be remains there.
While Christine concentrated on the color of topsoil, which would reveal disturbances caused by digging.
These colors, these little islands, did not exist in 2004. We've located a great area right about here that could be a potential location.
And have you brought any of this information to law enforcement?
We have. They don't want to hear it. We're not experts. We have no seriously formal training in this. We need a body. We need bones.
Having no way to confirm Christine and Shannon's work, we brought in some experts for help. Greg Cooper is the former unit chief of the FBI's Behavioral Profiling Unit. And Mike King is a retired profiler who uses spatial patterns to predict a killer's behavior.
Is the offender taking a great deal of risk burying bodies in the base of an arroyo where any form of runoff is going to expose them? Because somebody who does 11 successfully isn't a dummy who's just picking a place to dump a body. Are they buried there? They might be.
The following day, Christine led us to the spot they had pinpointed.
And so we have a bunch of bones.
People taking their dogs out here, killing them.
Looks like it.
So that's the spot. You can see that there is a depression here, and then a depression here. And this matches up with what we saw in both of our images.
Looks interesting. Very possible. I mean, how do you not follow up on that?
Yet digging for remains is not only illegal, it would be destroying evidence. Which is why we brought along scientists from the New Mexico Bureau of Geology.
Measurement number 1, and we could move to the next quarter meter.
As well as ground-penetrating radar that lets us assess the depressions without tainting a potential crime scene.
Disrupted right there, so that's kind of interesting.
So, what are you thinking?
There is something in the near subsurface. So we have our preliminary image from our test run transect here, and we are seeing some things in the image.
Along with geologists and profilers, Josh and I are looking at the spot where 8 missing women, possibly connected to the West Mesa killer, might be buried.
The first image we had, we thought we saw patterns that are indicative of something in the very near subsurface.
Right. Okay. All right. So there's something in each depression, maybe.
We still can't tell if it's human or...
It's not definitive, especially in terms of the type of material, but it does seem to indicate that there is something that's there. But you have to look at it on the computer to be
certain.
The next day, we received an email from the geologist with the results. These depressions are certainly man-made. In my opinion, it is certainly worth excavating even in the absence of definitive GPR data. Good luck and keep up the good work you're doing helping to keep marginalized women in Albuquerque safe. Christine and Shannon also shared these findings with the lead detective in the West Mesa case.
He said that if the spot was good, the information was good, but it would be too expensive. If we can't really go to sources with what we have at the moment, it's just not enough. At least we know how the process works and what to do for the next one and the next one and the next one.
There's 8 women out there who are still missing. And even if this isn't them, you never know. Somebody may come out and say something.
Thank you so much for your help to me, guys. We couldn't do it without you.
Christine and Shannon hoped with the airing of our show, the police would finally authorize a dig, bringing them one step closer to finding these missing women. Meanwhile, we'd also received the results of the voice comparison done on the message left for private investigator George Walker about Nina Harone, one of the 8 missing women.
I know who killed her, and I know why. The people that murdered her are now in California.
I think the same person that abducted Nina could be involved in the West Mesa murders.
Nina's mother believes she knows who left this message. And now, after we've reported this individual's voice, we're hoping it's a match.
We're looking for some of the girls who were on the Mesa.
I have nothing to do with that.
You're friends with a guy named Sam?
Sam, he's all right. He works out in California. Sam, he's all right. He works out in California.
I know who killed her. I'm in California.
California.
Yeah. Of course.
Armed with this new lead, we were finally able to make contact with Detective Mark Mannery from Albuquerque PD.
I had to see Ronnie Taylor when they were even looked at, period. Because we have over 1,000 kids. I can definitely tell you, he's not one of the people we will out.
While we weren't sure if Walker's tip had ever been looked into, we felt this clue needed to be addressed. One that may not only help solve the disappearance of Nina Harone, but may also lead to the West Mesa killer. So who is responsible for the deaths of these women? Was it a lone killer or part of a larger conspiracy? Until this case is solved, it's a burden we must all share. Yet one last question remained. Could the killings of 11 sex workers here be somehow connected to the killings of 10 sex workers in the case that started it all?
The lead investigators in the West Mesa buried bodies case are keeping a close eye on developments on Long Island.
APD admits there are some similarities between the Long Island case and the West Mesa case.
Josh and I have traveled across the country, following a trail of unsolved murders that we once believed could have been committed by 1 or 2 killers. Although we now know that idea to be false, we've come to realize these killings are still connected, just not in the way we all might think.
Could this be connected to the 10 dead women found on the beach in Long Island? They were all prostitutes, although they were found in burlap sacks. This sounds eerily familiar.
2 very large mass grave sites, both involving prostitutes.
So then they automatically make that connection. Sex workers here, sex workers there. It must be the same person.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, as we know, the truth is
that it's happening all over the country.
It's happening everywhere.
And nobody quite seems to understand it.
That the public sees connections between West Mesa and Go-Go Beach is not surprising. It's human nature to create connections, to draw patterns where there are none, so we can manage the fear that any one of us could be next.
We look for patterns because it gives us insight into the motives of the killer, why they are committing crimes against a particular group of individuals, why the victims are who they are. And if we can connect the dots, then we'll say, okay, the risk is confined to this group. I am not a member of that group, therefore I am safe.
We now know our cases aren't connected, but we wish they were. We wish only one or two twisted individuals were responsible for all these murders, rather than the real horror, that there are hundreds of killers murdering an untold number of women and dumping their bodies across the country. Killers like John Robert Williams, who's admitted to over 30 murders. Josh and I decided to reach out to John once again, in hopes he might have some insight into the West Mesa killings, as well as our other cases.
John, some quick questions to ask you.
Sure, go ahead.
Have you ever heard of the West Mesa killer?
I have no idea.
Do you know about the murders that happened in Atlantic City? 4 women found in a ditch. No.
Oh, you said Atlantic City. No, I don't know anything about them.
What about?
The only one I know about one is called, what is it, Calico, something like that, out in New York.
Gilgo Beach?
Yeah.
What do you
know about that?
I even know nothing.
No.
No, I swear to God. Really, I don't know why he said something about it. When he's talking on the phone, if I heard anything on the news about these murders happening up in New York, I said, no, you got to tell me how the police is questioning him and they never catch him. He's too good for him.
Who did it?
He used to be one of my pen pals.
Who?
His name is, he lives in Massapequa, New York. He's got me convinced that he done this thing out of fence.
Could it really be that easy? That after chasing down the Long Island serial killer for months, we'd suddenly just found him. This lead was impossible to ignore. Williams had already given us information about a possible killer named Roadrunner that investigators felt could be legit. Which is why Josh and I were now heading back to Long Island to track down this mysterious pen pal. So the guy who's writing John Robert Williams got a thank you from this person in prison, thanking him for sending him a card. Guy who's killed 3 people. That means that he's corresponding with more than one serial killer.
So, Peter, did you get a chance to look at the information that we sent you?
All serial killers since the 1980s study other serial killers.
So he doesn't go by his name on Facebook.
Well, we didn't know up who he is.
It's private, super private.
Most serial killers started out as groupies.
The murder auction, these are people who collect items that serial killers have owned, other killers have owned.
But in absolute numbers, we still talk about 1 or 2% of all groupies that really would go down that route.
There's that one on the corner, the open garage. Do you see one in there?
TV on the back. Is this his house or his parents' house?
I think it's his parents' house. I don't know if he still lives there or not, but
It's interesting if he does. That would fit. Long Island. Riff can't live with his parents.
isn't it always just like, oh, I would never have suspected he was such a nice guy?
That's the problem. They're harmless until they do something, and then somebody says, well, the signs were all there.
Whether this pen pal actually committed the murders at Gilgo Beach, as John Williams said he did, the what-ifs were impossible to ignore. But we knew it was better to do something and be wrong than do nothing and be right. Which left us with one last question. How are you going to engage him?
While staking out the mysterious pen pal, who John Robert Williams told us admitted to killing the women on Gilgo Beach and fooling police who came to question him, Rachel and I have made a surprising discovery. This pen pal's email on a blog about corresponding with serial killers.
For me, human behavior is fascinating, especially deviance.
Whoa. So he has corresponded
With
at least
300
murders. And now, after reaching out and telling him we're making a documentary, he's agreed to be interviewed, but only if we mask his identity and meet him at this address.
I think it must be down there.
He's in the basement.
In the basement?
He
you actually believe that it could be him?
John Robert Williams said so. So if there's another serial killer who believes that this guy's a serial killer, then yeah.
Aren't you a little bit nervous about how he's going to react once we tell him that we know that he's admitted to these murders?
I don't know what he's going to do, but we'll see.
I can't believe he lives in the basement. And he's corresponded with over 300 serial killers.
Ready?
This is basically the amount over the years how many I've sent out. 4,786. Sounds a little good, noise. This is from the werewolf butcher. He mentioned here that I know exactly what you're feeling and I know exactly why you're feeling it. It's the very need that drives me to kill. I'm not saying you should take me as an example of fear hunger because you demonstrate good control over it, but realize it will always be there. Hungry and unsatisfied until the end of your days.
Are you engaging your dark side?
This is all an outlet for me. You can only get so much from an arm. You can only get so much from a book. This is talking right to the source. To me, it's the most deepest part of someone. This is from Rifkin himself. He mentions Gilgo. He says, I'm sure that right now you heard about the bodies down on Gilgo Beach. It's almost 20 years and I'm back in the news.
This card is from 3 days after they found the first Long Island girl.
Where's that from?
With Joel Rifkin. But you guys didn't even know that at the time, did you? So, when these murders happened on Long Island, what did you suddenly think?
Didn't hit me at first until the situation with FBI.
The pen pal revealed the FBI and Suffolk County PD had come to question him about the murders on Gilgo Beach. We were corresponding with John Robert Williams, and he told us that you were the killer. Then we pulled up your name, saw your memorabilia, and then we didn't know what to think either.
You believed in a murderer, and you wanted to check it out, and you didn't tell me that. You gave me the impression that you're only here because you saw me in the blog. You didn't come here because you saw me in the blog. You came here because of Will.
That's true.
I'm not stupid either.
The pen pal denied telling Williams that he'd murdered the women, but instead only alluded to it, to get these killers to share their dark fantasies.
This is what I do. Since I was young, I was interested more in the evil than in the pleasures of the world. It doesn't make me a threat anymore. It doesn't make me a potential serial. Doesn't make me a weirdo or whatever term they want to use. So you're disappointed.
Our only disappointment is that Lisk still hasn't been caught. Of course, there are many reasons why. And almost immediately, we learn of a new reason, one that would throw this whole case into question.
Former Suffolk County Chief of Police James Burke was put in handcuffs this morning. Once the highest-ranking uniformed Suffolk cop, Burke is now facing federal charges that he broke laws he was supposed to uphold.
Investigators say that Chief Burke tortured a prisoner for stealing a duffel bag out of the chief's SUV.
Throughout the Lisk case, our request to interview the Suffolk County Police had been stonewalled by Chief Burke. Wanting to know why the police weren't talking led Rachel and me to a secret meeting over a year ago with someone who believed he had the answers. A former NYPD detective and web sleuther, known only as Hawkshaw.
The average Suffolk County homicide detective is frustrated, because they know this case is not going to go anywhere. They're certainly capable of solving it. The only problem is that they may be being held down by their superiors because they don't want them to go somewhere where they shouldn't be going.
Are you saying that they're trying to protect someone, possibly?
Yes, I think so. They consistently recruit girls from these strip joints They have wild parties down here. They have them all fly around.
In Oak Beach, too?
Oak Beach, Gilgo Beach, loads of parties.
Who is they?
Police, politicians. I spelled a rat right from the beginning. You've got this fella Burke and a case where a young man stole a duffel bag out of his car. And the question was, what was in that duffel bag? The police department runs the county. They threaten people if they try to expose them, because they've got a lot of things to protect out there. Comes back to sex, power, and money, I think. The whole thing here is about sex and power and money.
At the time, Hawkshaw's claims that officials were dragging their heels seemed far-fetched. But now with the scandal over Burke's duffel bag coming to light, maybe this web sleuther wasn't so far off the mark.
According to police, in the bag was the chief's ammunition, handcuffs, and possibly illegal pornography.
And those allegations were just the beginning.
In the past, Burke had a relationship with a convicted prostitute. He had left his service weapon with her. Guess what? He was then appointed to be the head of investigations for the Suffolk County District Attorney, Tom Spoda, and then was promoted to chief.
However, after becoming chief, Burke's misconduct went even further.
You've got assistant United States attorneys describing Burke's operation is sort of akin to the KGB. Burke put a GPS device on the car of a high-ranking county official. There was a wiretap of a Suffolk County detective. The big question that everybody wants to know is whether they are going to try to arrest other law enforcement officials.
The day after Burke's arrest, there's been another major development.
All right. I want to thank everyone for coming today. With the 5th anniversary of the Gilgo homicide investigation approaching, I've invited the FBI to work in close collaboration with the Suffolk County Police Department in investigating these murders. And I want to thank the FBI for agreeing to do that.
While the FBI's return offers some hope, many have questioned why the feds weren't more involved. And now, after receiving a memo leaked from inside the Suffolk County PD, reporter Joseph Goldstein may have an answer.
In December of 2012, the police detectives wanted to meet again with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. And there's a memo that makes clear that it was the district attorney's office's opinion that this upcoming meeting between the FBI and these homicide detectives was unnecessary, and they canceled the meeting with the FBI.
Despite requests from lead detectives for FBI assistance, DA Spoda and Chief Burke's decision would effectively shut them out of this case.
What difference would those 3 years of cooperation have made? I don't know.
Yet the fact that we're even asking this question is shocking. And it's forced many to assume the real reason Spoda and Burke didn't want the FBI around was to keep them from uncovering their questionable behavior, which has led to another stunning declaration, this time from Suffolk County's highest-ranking official, Steve Bellone.
For lying about Jim Burke and conspiring to conceal his past, for refusing and blocking federal law enforcement, for working on the Gilgo Beach serial murder case, for violating your sacred oath, and for using your position as the top law enforcement officer of this county. Tom Spoda, you must resign from this office. And if you fail to do so, I will call on the governor to exercise his authority under the Constitution to remove you from this office.
In the face of such alleged corruption, it was becoming even harder to discern if bringing in the FBI now is real change or damage control. To decide which, Rachel and I again requested a sit-down with Suffolk County PD. And to our surprise, we got one. We tried to have conversations for 2 years with the Suffolk County Police Department. We've been denied every single time. But now, here we are speaking with you. Why is that?
It's important for me to project the fact that we're not trying to hide anything, and we want to move this department forward, particularly when we're coming on the heels of the indictment and incarceration of the former chief of police.
Rachel and I were now speaking with the new police commissioner, Timothy Sini, to hear his plan for finally solving this case.
You're dealing with the chief of police who is supposed to be investigating a case of sex workers.
Right.
Who has his own history with sex workers. So how do we disentangle that from this case?
Every day we do everything we can to solve it. And that's why I immediately got the FBI on board.
So are we going to get a profile in this case, a revised profile?
We're going to get a full profile in this case.
Never had a profile before?
We never had a full profile done by the FBI.
Really? How can you not?
Well, there certainly was a conscious decision to not involve other agencies. And that was a mistake. We're going to have 2 FBI agents work on this case, as well as the behavioral science unit out of Quantico. We don't have someone in handcuffs for any of these murders. So that should be chilling to the public. And I understand that it is. And that's why we're asking the public for help.
So you think this case can be solved?
I do.
Encouraged by Sini's transparency, we shared what we'd learned during our investigation, including the calls we believe Lisk made to Sarah Carnes.
She said she's staying in a warehouse in Queens.
We also played Carl Kay's gift, showing the similarities between Asian male and Mosaic. And finally, our discovery that Jessica Taylor was most likely picked up from Queens Plaza, moving her killer's hunting grounds closer to Long Island.
Would you talk to the lieutenant?
Yeah. Our meeting seemed like a step in the right direction, but we also shared in the frustration many had felt, especially the victims' families. While serial murder cases are notoriously difficult to solve, here in Long Island, it was one of the largest, most well-funded police departments in the country, one marked by political infighting and corruption that sadly only added to this tragedy. For the moment, we must give the new administration the chance to right the wrongs of the past. However, like so many, we'll be watching and waiting. But that didn't mean our work was done. After months of crunching homicide stats from all 50 states, data journalist Tom Hargrove is finally called to tell us what he's found. We immediately head to D.C., still amazed that Tom and his team can connect killings that local police and the feds cannot.
So now you've processed the 2013 data.
We've assembled the 10-year arc from 2004 to 2013. In Cuyahoga County, Ohio, that's Cleveland, there were 31 women who were murdered. Only 8 were solved. Yikes. Since 2000, they've been solving 50% of the murders. This is the largest suspicious cluster in the nation. Past experience indicates that probably most of these contain serial murders.
Because Hargrove's data is just numbers and stats without any victims' names, we must first match each record to an actual unsolved murder.
Josh and I are looking into a few female homicides.
Which is why, once again, we're turning to Web Sleuth and its members for help.
There may be an active serial killer.
First, we create a thread asking for any info on unsolved murders of women in Cleveland. Next, we must wade through hundreds of online articles and blogs as we match names and faces in hopes of seeing a pattern.
A 21-year-old Cleveland woman who died from sharp injuries to head and neck. Here's another one in March. She was found lying in a Amy identifies mother found on Cleveland's east side. Pronounced dead on the scene.
Take a look at this. 2011, 48 murders, and then it goes up 67, 83.
It's almost doubled in 4 years.
What is wrong with Cleveland?
Tom Hargrove's algorithm has identified 24 unsolved female homicides over a 3-year period, suggesting a serial killer may be on the loose in Cleveland.
So this is the first woman we came upon, Jasmine Trotter, 20, was found under a porch. This is March 26, 2013. Trotter left her boyfriend's home at 5 a.m. Friday to walk to work.
We looked in abandoned buildings, abandoned lots, and we came to this one home, and her purse was in the backyard. My nephew looked in the porch, and that's when he found her body.
She was killed with blunt force trauma, strangulation. She was sexually assaulted.
She wasn't a sex worker. She was going to work. It seems so strange that she was snatched and dragged to an abandoned house, and that seemed to me what happened with some of the other ones.
Right. First, Jasmine was found on the 23rd. Then Christina was found in between 2 and 3 days later.
Just a few blocks away from where Jasmine was found. And just days later, residents would discover the body of Christine Malone, a grandmother of 5.
Somebody had beat her to death, beat her in blunt force trauma. In my mother's case, she was missing for a whole week. Nobody done nothing, wasn't nothing on the news. And 8 days after we reported her missing, she turns up inside of a field.
Another person at 5 o'clock in the morning, right off this main street.
Grabs her, drags her back to here. Look how far away we are from the road. So, not very organized.
Not at all.
And then there was Ashley Mashetsky, who was also found off 93rd Street, within blocks of the other victims.
How can somebody just drag somebody right there at that main street into a field? Nobody seen nothing.
There is too many people out here that are losing their families, that are being murdered.
Hargrove's data pointed us to at least 3 cases of murdered women, all showing signs of blunt force trauma, and all within a 5-mile radius around 93rd Street. 2 of which we were confident were connected. But we'd also uncovered 2 attacks in the same area and time with similar signatures. Of course, we can't be sure all these crimes were committed by the same individual, yet the pattern was there. And while the police weren't denying women were being attacked and murdered, they weren't saying much more. Have the police said that they think it's connected at all?
No.
And no one was saying the word serial killer.
Sorry. Cleveland Division of Police Public Information Office is not available.
And maybe one reason why nobody was saying those words was because they'd said them so many times before. Most recently, in 2009, when Anthony Sowell was found with the remains of 11 African American women in his home. And then in 2013, when copycat Michael Madison was found with the remains of 3 more women in his home. But according to web sleuth Peter Brent, these were all signs of a much deeper problem.
You have a population which is basically disenfranchised by the political social climate. You have a system there that doesn't pay any attention if any potential serial killer would show any signs that something bad is about to happen. And you have a police department that competes for spotting the 10 most inept in the world. It's a perfect storm.
But the point is that this serial killer is active. He is in Cleveland and he is currently killing individuals.
Like nobody cares. It's an old problem when you start to hunt for serial killers. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a damn.
You're a parent or a sister of someone, you want something right now. And when I talked to Ashley's mother, she's really frustrated. She just feels like she's just in her head this ball. She's not getting a response from police, no detectives helping her, and she just feels lost. These families need justice, and they need closure. You represent which district?
So from basically 93rd and Union back to 93rd and Mounds. So that whole stretch is me.
you may have an active serial killer.
It's not something we're gonna be able to whitewash, put underneath the rug. We're gonna have to do something. First thing, and I'm glad you guys are doing this, the first thing we gotta do is recognize we got a problem. We need more police solving these crimes because these individuals keep doing what they do until they get caught.
In addition to having so many serial killers, Cleveland has another problem. Like Albuquerque, this police department is also being monitored by the Department of Justice for a staggering list of excessive force violations, severely limiting its ability to protect and serve.
City of Cleveland police officers not only don't do community policing, they don't even know how to do community policing. The belly of the beast is still in bad shape in these wards and these communities and these neighborhoods.
It seems Hargrove is right. There is a serial killer stalking the streets of Cleveland, just like there was a serial killer stalking the streets of Albuquerque, the highways of Oklahoma City, the beaches of Daytona, the back alleys of Atlantic City, and the back pages of Long Island. We now know we can't solely rely on police anymore. Responsibility falls on us, all of us, to solve these crimes. The reality is, we live in a broken system that, because of bureaucracy, because of prejudice, fails to protect those who need our help most. They're our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, and our wives. To fix our failures, we must mandate that every victim be counted, every murder reported, and every agency be held accountable for sharing that data. Our loved ones are the victims, and no one has the right to withhold their information or deny them justice, so that one day this killing season will end.